What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily Podcast, powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. We are going to be talking about stock-up players coming out of the first week or so of camp. Had a big scrimmage on Saturday. We're going to talk to you about some players whose stock is rising based on their performance at camp, performance in the scrimmage. A lot of factors leading these guys to rise up and potentially play a bigger role than maybe we anticipated at the beginning of camp. Stock market's been fluctuating, but we'll talk about Canes stock here. Also, pro Canes. Preseason is the time where some of these guys really flash and make their name and show their NFL teams that they are guys that should be sticking around, that should be, factors on the team going forward. There's some guys playing in lower leagues, maybe trying to show that they belong in an NFL camp. So we'll bring you up to date on the latest with Miami's pro Canes in the NFL and beyond. First, I want to talk about some folks that their stock always remains high, and that is Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anijar and Levine. All right, Pete, hop in. We got your new setup here.
Look, it's all beautiful behind me, and we are in the same room. Some people think we're in different locations, but we are, in fact, in the same place. You have the beautiful faux wood paneling behind you. I now have some friends behind me as well, but only up from here. It's going to keep getting prettier.
Yeah, maybe we should get some wood paneling there. And part of the weird thing is I'm looking at the camera. I'm not actually looking at Pete, so he could be making faces at me, like holding up a sign, like, this guy's a jerk. This guy blows goats like Wayne's World. And I wouldn't even notice because I'm not actually looking at Pete. So I don't want to give him too many ideas. But in any event, a lot to talk about here. Camp's been rolling. Of course, Gator game coming up. We don't want to give up too much that we're hearing from camp that might be too specific, but at the same time, we want to give you guys a picture of what's happening, things we're hearing, things that are going on at camp at the scrimmage on Saturday, which was closed to the public, but was very explosive. You heard Mauro say the offense was rolling. I can confirm that's exactly what I understand to have taken place at the scrimmage. So we'll get into some players whose stock is rising, or stocks are rising with this program. And I want to start with a name that was a 3-star recruit, guy making a transition from wide receiver to defensive back, also returned kicks. The athleticism was there, nice camp performance, but had some question marks, was not the 5-star corner that Miami was looking for in the camp, in this class, but he might end up playing that way. And that is OJ Romanus Frederic out of Deerfield Beach, then later St. Thomas Aquinas. 6'1", long corner, had speed for days. We mentioned he returned kicks at St. Thomas, played receiver. So the athletic ability, the ball skills, something they've been missing a little bit, in my opinion, in the corner room. Guys that can make plays with the ball in their hands, guys that can make plays on the ball. Antro Roll, who Pete, I know you interviewed for the FRM podcast. Philip Buchanan, guys in the past for the Canes, they were multiple position players in high school, special teams, offense, scoring touchdowns, and that translated to when they played defensive back. We got a little bit away from that, started recruiting guys that were more just DBs only, and I think our playmaking ability suffered. This is a guy who had that coming in. There were questions about how long it would take him, right? How much time it would take it to get to the point where he could play corner at the University of Miami. Talking to sources, and we mentioned this in the offseason that he was a guy to watch, but now they're playing football. They're playing scrimmages. They're playing in pads. And this guy's hype train continues to not just roll, but pick up speed to the point where I would be surprised if this guy does not play a significant role on the defense this year.
Legit 4-4 guy, from what I understand, when he was camping at Miami last year. And I came away very impressed. If you guys haven't checked out the interview that I did with him for Media Day, we have that posted on the YouTube page. We played it in one of the podcasts a couple of weeks ago as well. But very mature, has put good weight on. I think he told me he was in the 188, 190 range as well, which, again, that's step number one for playing as a freshman, is making sure that size is where it needs to be. But by all accounts of, from what you're saying and other people who are there, we understand this is a position, cornerback, where there were going to be some spots up for grabs. And if he comes in and is able to make an impact early, it'd be a huge shot in the arm. It's interesting, though, D, is he a guy that you see, again, we still have some time left in camp here, but week one, Swamp, it's a position where communication is going to be vital. you think he's pushing for snaps in that game?
Look, we'll see, right? I don't want to get too much into what's going to happen on opening day. What I'll tell you is over the course of the season, I think that OJ Romanus Frederic is going to play a lot on the defense because of things he has shown, his ball skills, his speed, his patience. A lot of these athletic corners tend to, be a little jumpy sometimes, especially when they're new to the position. They might want to be overeager to make a play. This is a guy who plays with patience, who plays beyond his years at that position, which again, he is rather new to. Combine that with the length, combine that with the speed, combine that with the ball skills, combine that with the ability to do something with the ball in his hands, which you saw as a returner. If he can tackle when the bullets are live, you are talking about a player who, if you slapped a high 4 or 5 star next to his name, I think the perspective on him would be different because the skill set is premium.
I tried to get to the bottom of the OJ nickname with him, and he said that was his dad's nickname. So I said, "You're OJJ then," but there's no cool story there other than that was his dad's nickname. But I think that it will be a household name for Canes fans by midseason, without a doubt.
No question about it. And a potential, I don't say solution because this position, you need a lot of guys, but Miami has struggled to recruit premium corners, guys that are going to play in the NFL, high draft pick. I think the last year was viewed as a step back in that regard. Like you got maybe guys that can help you down the road potentially, but you didn't get that premium guy. This guy, I'm not going to crown him in any way, but if he continues to progress in the ways that he's progressing, maybe he becomes that premium guy in this class who is then supplemented in the subsequent class with guys like Jabari Antoine and other big names on Miami's board. So now you are stacking premium cornerbacks, not just loading up in the class of 2025, but starting that here in the class of 2024 with an OJ Frederic.
Without a doubt. And, we've talked about him before. Ryan Mack's also a guy who's had a good early camp here. We'll see what his role looks like throughout the season, but it definitely looks like Frederic is stock up, arrow pointing up.
Yep. Another guy who the arrow is pointing up. This is somebody who we love on the podcast because he is like the best interview of all time. Just a great kid, extremely intelligent kid. Ray Joseph out of Edison, second-year player. We've talked a lot about his development at receiver. Former running back, has been working hard, as you could see in these clips, to develop as a pure receiver. And I'm told that development is heading on the right track. He is improving. When you work hard, when you're smart, when you're conscientious, that tends to happen. So the athleticism, the skill with the ball in his hands, the ability to break tackles, the balance that's been there. But now he's adding those wide receiver skills. Xavier Restrepo, somebody who did not necessarily always play receiver like he did now. He was multiple positions when he was at Monarch. So he kind of came up and then really honed in at receiver and made, consistent improvements through today. Joseph, similar mindset, similar personality to a Restrepo. I could see that progression continue. One thing that I'm told about Ray Joseph, and doesn't surprise me, is when full contact begins, right? And as the situations get more game realistic, his balance, his ability to break tackles, just the ability to absorb contact, that plays up. Whereas in 7-on-7s, you're focused on sort of the receiving elements of his game, which he works on. But the natural kind of running back skills, the ability to break tackles, to keep his balance, to make guys miss, that shows more in game situations. And I think that is why you're encouraged by his progress as a receiver, because then once you get into a game, all the other stuff plays up. And of course, those talents help him very much in the return game, where I expect him to be a significant factor.
Yeah, another guy that we had on, obviously, over the springtime with Canes Connection, but in Media Day, posted that interview last week or the week before, and he mentioned the added weight that he's put on, how it does help him, and it should help him over the course of the season take those hits that he's going to take as a slot receiver. And you mentioned it right there in the return game. I think he can definitely be a weapon for this team. So excited about him. Great attitude, always has a smile on his face, and it's infectious in that locker room.
Yeah, no, these are the kind of guys you want to recruit because you're betting on their progress. And guys that tend to have good grades, it's like I always talk about the guys with good grades. There's a lot of great Hall of Fame, the best players of all time type football players who did not like school, right? That's not a disqualifying factor whatsoever. And also book smarts don't necessarily guarantee your instincts and certain things on the football field. However, to me, guys with those 4.0s like Ray Joseph had, or I guess he had way more than a 4.0 because of the way these grade scales are now, they have to have a certain amount of discipline in high school. And if you have that discipline in high school when you're the man, you got the girls after you're playing football, you're young, and you still keep that discipline, that tends to carry over. And that tends to carry over to other parts of your life, including playing football, getting better at something like being a receiver, which takes work when you're not practicing. It takes running routes like you saw in those clips, catching balls, doing the jugs machine when you're not in an official practice. So discipline carries over. I'm not surprised that the discipline that Ray showed in the classroom has carried over to the football field. And
the loyalty, man. We talked about it with him back in spring, had a chance to play wherever he wanted down here in South Florida, and, stayed at Edison, who at the time was not not necessarily a year in, year out power down here, and stayed there, could have gone anywhere else, stuck it out there, was the man there, comes here, isn't playing all that much last year, right? And continues to stick with it. And I think his progress will be shown this season on the field.
Yeah, no, excited to see what he can do again, not just wide receiver, but also in the return game. I think he's going to be a major factor and someone who really is showing his value to the team and why he needs to be on the field. Another guy who he was the other guy in the clips we showed. We showed Ray catching passes, the guy throwing passes, another super worker, very smart guy, very disciplined, very driven. That is Emery Williams. I've mentioned on this pod before, I thought Reese Poffenbarger had the edge coming out of spring just because of his twitch. I thought Emery was a little bit rusty. Remember, he hurt his wrist at the end of the season against Florida State. My view of what's happening now is that you are seeing a healthier, sharper Emery Williams, which is going to give him a better shot to potentially be that second quarterback. That's a battle that's ongoing. No one's, long way before you have to figure out who's going to take that snap if, God forbid, something happened to Cam Ward. But I think what you're seeing with Emery is a sharper player, a healthier player, an improved player from what you saw in spring in the spring game.
Was it a wrist or an elbow? Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was an elbow, but you would know better than I would.
It was I thought it was his non-throwing arm was injured when he was extending the play of Florida State. I thought it was his wrist, but it could be his elbow. It was his arm, but ultimately not something that hurts his throwing, but rehabbing from that injury, then jumping right into spring, which a lot of people thought he might not play spring. He was a little behind. So I think overall you were just seeing a sharper, physically better, mentally better, just a better Emery Williams here in fall camp.
Well, and I think the thing with Emery in terms of that backup quarterback position, D, is like hypothetically last year should have been, that's the floor for him, right? And you were able to win a game against the Clemson, go toe-to-toe on the road against the Florida State, right? So obviously another guy who we hear great things about his work ethic and everything in the locker room that he does in terms of, getting with the receivers and being one of the first guys in the building. It's a guy that you expect to get better, right? You expect to continue to improve. So again, I think as a backup quarterback potentially here, he's someone that you can trust. If it has to come in the game in a pinch, is not going to throw the game away. I'm not saying that Poff would do that either, but again, you've seen it. He's not a completely proven commodity, but you have a good idea of what he's going to do when he comes in the ball game, right? So I think that's where he might have a little bit of the upper hand.
Yeah, I was talking to my boy Mike Goldfarb, big Canes fan, and he used the phrase "do no harm" with Emery. I think that's a good phrase to describe his game. He tries to do no harm when he's in there as the backup quarterback, and that's something you want at that position. So moving on to somebody who also kind of dealt with an injury, I felt in spring. We didn't practice at all in spring, but dealt with an injury before even then during the season. So we saw him play, we saw him produce, but he was not 100%. And now had the time to sit out, miss spring, rehab, is now full go for really the first time in a Miami Hurricanes uniform. That is A.J. Allen, the transfer originally from Louisiana area, signed with Nebraska, played there as a freshman, then transferred over to Miami last year, played with a shoulder injury all season, was productive, had a yards per carry north of 5, had a great game against Clemson, really helped us win that game. Classic running against Virginia, leapfrogging a defender, but was not fully himself again because of that shoulder injury. So you bring him in as a fully fresh running back behind this offensive line, and he is showing some nice things. He is somebody who's going to contribute to the Canes this year, and I think show even more than he showed last year because of the improved health.
He's got some quicks. I've seen him up close. He's obviously not the tallest back, but he's well put together. I think he's someone you can probably trust in pass protection. He played as a freshman at Nebraska, dealt with some injury stuff there, but they were very excited about him. I think same thing here last year, showed some nice things. Like you mentioned, probably the run of the year or the highlight of the year from that running back spot for the Canes against UVA in that game. But you bring him back here, and it's a really nice change of pace from what you have in Martinez, Fletcher. You understand that they're obviously bigger backs. Everyone understands the speed that Chris Johnson is bringing to the table, and Shannon Dawson has spoken highly of him. But those quicks, man, I think can really be a nice, like I said, change of pace to throw in there. Third down back, maybe catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. So I really like his skill set for this offense.
And I think the thing for him is, can he make those big explosive runs? Because he was efficient last year, 5 yards per carry, but Miami's running game as a whole was in that range. That was what we ranked in yards per carry, and that was without the explosive runs. The point being, if you were able to make explosive runs, not only are you good in yards per carry with that 5 number, you're getting into the high fives because you're breaking big runs to boost that up a little bit more. The fact that we had such a high yard per carry without the explosive runs is a really unusual stat, and something that Coach Cristobal mentioned in one of his pressers. We just need to be more explosive because we're getting a lot of yards before contact. And that's on the running backs. I think Allen can do that. He showed a little bit of that in Nebraska, showed a lot of that in high school. I think with better health, you'll see more explosive runs from Allen. And of course, guys like Chris Johnson, Damian Martinez, who I can tell you are extremely explosive backs. You've seen a little bit of it with Johnson, certainly seen a lot of it when you watch the highlights of David Martinez. A.J. Allen going to factor into this running back room, and I'd really love to see big plays from Allen.
Now, as we transition, of course, those were the guys with some recent stock up here from practice, and we're going to talk about some guys who are now on the next level. D, you know, you love your pro Canes. Go ahead. You want to make a plug real quick.
Before we get to those guys, let's talk about, some folks again, like Anajar and Levine. This stock arrow keeps pointing up. It is a new store, which is just everything brand new, everything deluxe. That's the Miami Hurricane team store right across campus. You see, again, the cool thing about this team store is it is official. So you get the premium gear from Adidas and elsewhere, but you also have affiliation with the University of Miami athletics program. So you support the program by buying these premium athletics. You see the players here in the modeling. Pull up that tweet I sent you with JoJo Trader talking about a sale or a deal here where if you go to the team store, and this has been extended through August 31st, you go to the team store, you get entered in a raffle to potentially win a game-worn jersey just for shopping at the team store. You had JoJo Trader doing the spot there, which, he gets paid a lot more than me. So he's a pretty good guy to do the ad.
I'm pulling it up right now.
Hurricanes fans talk about a Hurricane team store that enter to win an authentic game-worn jersey. Number 0, be my number this year. So
there he is with his jersey. So pretty cool stuff there. Again, Miami Hurricanes team store there at the Thesis Hotel across from campus. And some guys that are former Canes, but we're all excited to follow their careers here at the next level, D. And it's interesting because a couple of these guys have kind of been, subject of discussion about their draft stock and why they left and all that. So it's cool to see them do some good things already early at the next level. But we'll start here with Cam Kitchens, one of everyone's favorites. And this is coming from the head man, Sean McVay, who was mic'd up during their first preseason game over the weekend. So Sean McVay, during the game, his thoughts here on Cam Kitchens.
Inside Rams territory to the 20, and the Cowboys got a drive going here.
Quick game. Nice job right there. Cam Kitchens, you bobbled the
There
slant.
he is.
ends up getting the breakup. He had a really good practice against these guys the other day. You can see he's getting more and more comfortable. Good range coming out of the deep part of the field. This is an excellent job by him being able to trigger, make a play on the slant. That's big time right there by a quarter safety.
Sean, every time we look up, whether it's here or at camp, he is making a play.
He is, and he's getting more and more comfortable. He was, playing a lot in just the post at Miami, and we're asking him to do some different things, but he's a smart, conscientious guy. I love working with him, and he's getting better and better.
Tyler Davis got home again.
He's big.
He seems like a guy, Sean, to me that plays faster when he gets on the grass. Like, forget his times, forget all that. When he's playing football and just seeing what he sees and reacting, his speed seems totally different on the football field.
He couldn't be more right. And that's the one thing you can never,
So obviously already on the, on the coach, he's already becoming a coach's favorite there, D. And personally, I don't know if there were many better landing spots for him than the Rams. The Rams are, an organization that they don't really look so much at the testing numbers from combine. They typically send, the least amount of scouts and executives and personnel to the combine every year because they're more worried about the game film itself. And there's a lot of analytics within the game film that they, look at differently than other teams. But obviously we knew that with Cam, his, the weak point, so to speak, in his evaluation was that he was not going to test like a high level safety would normally test, but obviously his play speed makes up for that. And as the announcer said as well, he's been making plays in practice too. Obviously it's one thing to flash in games, but if you're not doing it throughout these weeks of practice and training camp, right, it's not consistent enough to be able to not only make the team, which he's going to do as a third round pick, but be a high level, player and starter for this team.
Yeah, and I think safety is a position where more than any other position, except maybe quarterback, the physical is just not as important. Of course, a guy like Sean Taylor, who has all the intangibles plus all the tangibles, that's going to be your gold standard. But we've seen so many safeties, including Ed Reed, quite frankly, who are not these big, super fast players that are going to test out of this world, but that are very coordinated, can, obviously range to the ball and make a play on the ball, who could tackle, who are physical, and more importantly, are smart, can see things before they happen, and have the instincts to really, again, see things develop and run the show back there. And I think you look at the Buffalo Bills had two of those guys making Pro Bowls. Kevin Byard was a very good player for the Tennessee Titans, similar, in my opinion, to Cam Kitchens. Guys like Cam who consistently get interceptions going back to high school, they're going to do that in the pros. They have that knack. He's more than good enough as a tackler. He was a very good tackler at Miami. He did make mistakes last year as a junior, was not as good as his senior year, but we probably try to do too much. But I think in the pros, where he could just live football all day, he's going to eliminate those mistakes. And a guy like Cam, who loves football and is extremely intelligent, the more football you give him, he will improve more than other people because he's going to take it all and use it. He's going to dive into it. So the fact that, some people say, oh, well, this player is not that smart. The fact that he now doesn't have to go to school and he can do football all the time, that's going to help him more. In some cases, that might be the case, but in some cases, the guy that's not that smart, he doesn't really care that much to learn. So the fact you're giving him more and you have more opportunities to learn doesn't necessarily help that player. A guy like Cam, who's going to use every resource he has to get better and is going to digest information and retain it because of his intelligence, the more you can give him, and now that his job is football, his leaps are going to be even more profound, even though his physical ability might have a ceiling. So I think Cam is in a perfect spot for the reasons you mentioned, Pete. I think he's the kind of guy who will get a lot better in the NFL, even though he, again, is not the freak athlete with a lot of, untapped upside physically. It's the mental upside that he has because of his ability to retain information that I think is going to aid his progression.
And look, these teams don't have patience with players these days, D. I mean, obviously he was a third round pick, so there's a little bit more leeway with a guy like him, but you're drafted by the Rams as a top 3 round pick like that. They are expecting you to come in and make a big impact, to get a lot of snaps. And there's not going to be that same learning curve, as you mentioned. So we're excited to continue watching him. And I think he's a guy the Rams fans will fall in love with pretty quickly there, as they already are. Another guy who the fan base is already starting to become a big fan of up there in Cincinnati is Matt Lee, who we're going to play these clips here. But D, I said it multiple times throughout the draft process with Matt Lee as his, tested off the charts, had a really good year at Miami. There were medical concerns with him that kind of kept him from being higher than a 7th round pick, which he ended up, going at. But he came in as the 3rd string center. I saw a lot of Bengal fans were already asking him to be the backup center up there, to be the 2nd string guy. So look, it's a tricky position because I've said it in his case before. He does not have the versatility to necessarily play guard. That's not what many evaluators, have said, and it's not a position he played in his college career. Most of the time, teams are going to keep, their backup backup center, most of the time, is a guy who can also double as a guard because injuries happen mid-game and if they need to play there. But film looked really good from the other day. This is a 4-minute clip that you guys can find on Twitter if you search his name. So we may not get through the whole 4 minutes here, but really good debut for him against the Bucks. Yeah,
I think one thing with Lee, and I'm just watching these clips, reminds me of what we saw when he was at Miami. Yes, he's very athletic, like you mentioned, tested off the charts, very smart, what you need at the center position. I think his anchor is underrated, especially for a guy that's not like a huge center. He does a very good job of not giving up ground. He has very good leverage. He plays, I think, stronger than maybe you see when you look at him. Something he did in college, and now you see here in the pros, he's doing that as well. So, of course, look at that awareness there. Go ahead and get both guys, the athleticism to reach both guys. He has a lot of tools that you need at the center position. The health was the only issue. I wish that the Dolphins drafted him because they could use this guy. But with him, if he does in fact have some issues that might be chronic, you hope he gets on the field earlier than later so he can get some money and get some starts under his belt. However, you really never know. That Bengals uniform reminds me of Anthony Munoz. Not comparing him as a player, but just saying that Anthony Munoz was somebody that had no medical. Some people had him off the board totally because of his bad medical coming out of USC, ended up being arguably the greatest offensive lineman of all time. So you really don't know what that medical will lead to. There's a lot of unknowns, and you hope that Matt Lee can have a long and productive career off to a great start here.
Listen, the way it works in the league is if he comes in and is healthy his first couple of years and nothing really, no major issues arise, then that kind of proves that he can stay healthy. And that's how they look at it. He was just not a guy that teams, again, they're investing draft picks in players, and they're, those medical concerns lead some teams to say, all right, well, maybe we take a flyer on him late, really good player. But man, if he can stay healthy these next couple of years, get an opportunity to start at a certain point over there in Cincy, then he could be a guy who definitely gets to a second contract.
No, excited to see his development. And, also excited to see somebody he was going up against quite a bit. Not someone who's going to go against this year in the NFL, but maybe in the future. And that's Leonard Taylor.
Strong in game the other day. And it was a situation where the consistency wasn't where it needed to be, right? And sorry, I think the audio was playing over me there. But yeah, the consistency was not where it needed to be at Miami. You see him just glide right past I don't know if it was the center or the guard there, but the athleticism on display, looks like the guard there gets upfield quickly. And again, someone that head coach Robert Saleh, and this is a play where he comes in unblocked, but just, the athleticism, the quickness, no one has ever doubted that, right? Down in and down out, that motor needs to stay the same. Coming in as a guy potentially who you're not going to need to play every snap for the Jets. Is he someone that could come in pass rushing situations and wreak havoc next to Quinnen Williams? Let's see. But it sounds like it's trending. Like I said, Robert Saleh had really good remarks about him, saying that he has had strong practices the last week or so, which, again, you can't just flash in these games. When it comes to someone like Leonard Taylor, they need to see that every day from him, right? So if he can continue to take those steps, then there's no reason he cannot make this Jets team, and the upside's there. So obviously we will continue to track his career, and excited about his potential but needs to continue to do it every single day in practice.
Yeah, and I misspoke. He never played for UFL, right? I don't know why. I know he got drafted super high. I thought he played
well,
there.
They drafted him. Yeah, they drafted him because it's kind of a contingency thing. Because now that UFL team will hold his rights is what happens. So if he does get cut, and doesn't want to stick around on practice squad, or another team doesn't pick him up in practice squad and he wants to get game reps, then his rights revert to that UFL team. But yeah, that's where he stands right now, but trending up for sure.
Yeah, so ignore all the UFL talk I said. But yeah, no, everybody knows he's got ability. Everybody knows he's got quickness, and maybe that was the wake-up call he needed. Marcus Forson was somebody who had a similar undrafted scenario. He seemed like he might have made it, but didn't quite get there with the Patriots. You hope Leonard Taylor can not only get on a roster, but stick on a roster and use this as motivation for a long career. He has the talent. He's young. He's got a lot of time ahead of him.
And then the next guy, we have a couple more guys to talk about here. James Williams. I think everyone understands the potential that he has, and playing in a new position for the Titans, who drafted him 7th round as well. And head coach Brian Callahan spoke about him and the upside that he has.
Yeah, James, I don't think James even knows how good he could be yet. He's still learning the position as a converted safety, but he's got some things that he flashes that are really impressive. And so there's some battles going on back in that back of the linebacker room, and they're taking advantage. All of them have taken advantage of increased opportunity because of the injuries that have occurred, and I'm really happy that they have. Excited about those.
So playing that new linebacker role up there in Tennessee D, your thoughts on what James Williams will do, as it seems like he's pushing for a 53-man roster spot up there.
Yeah, it seems like a replay of Ray Armstrong. I remember when Ray Armstrong got drafted by the Rams or got picked up by the Rams. A lot of flashes in preseason. You heard similar statements like that from his coaching staff. He ended up playing in a ton of games, I believe 86 games as a pro. You wish he made that transition earlier in his UM career, similar to James Williams, where you wish that he had done it earlier in his career and maybe got drafted higher. But he's in a higher position than Ray Armstrong already because he was a drafted player. I think he's probably more talented than Ray Armstrong. So that to me would be a lower end projection for him playing 86 games. He could potentially be an impact guy that sticks around as the weight comes on. We always knew he can get up to that 240 range. So excited to see what he can do with that weight, because we haven't seen this player. We haven't seen this guy at this size play at Miami. It's like almost having a new player out there. The versatility, which you need in the NFL these days to be able to cover tight ends, be able to play the pass and do those sorts of things. Excited to see what James Williams can do.
And then Charleston Rambo obviously had a couple, was it 1 or 2 years? Yeah, I think it was 1 year at Miami, with De'Ara King. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but had a really strong year at Miami and is now playing in the CFL, one of the leading receivers in the league. Had another touchdown grab the other night as we're showing the clip right here. And it's his first year in the CFL. So typically these are 2-year deals where you're pretty much locked in for 2 years up there. Hopefully he comes back and gets an opportunity after, has this season, has another season. And at that point would be a nice veteran pickup potentially. Has to continue doing what he's doing. It seems like week in, week out, he's scoring touchdowns. He didn't do it here. He's been throwing up the U all over the place up there in Canada. But a guy who was a real craftsman at the position. I think maybe the lack of top end speed hurt him a bit there in terms of his NFL prospects. But if you tear it up there consistently, you're going to get another opportunity to come and play in the NFL.
Yeah, he's somebody who really was extremely productive. I mean, we forget just how much of an impact he made as a deep threat, having seen what followed, where you did struggle to throw the ball down the field. And right before, right? Remember when Mark Pope and D. Wiggins, you struggled to have the downfield passing with those guys. He had that 1 year where he was just so devastating down the field, able to track the ball. It was almost like an oasis in the desert. You hope that he has a chance to get to the NFL level. Of course, CFL, you can make a good living and make plays, which he's doing, but keeps working, keeps improving his body, keeps maturing, You never know if he can get a chance, but he's someone that really, even though he only had 1 year, made a big impact at the University of Miami, and his name is in record books.
Yep. So that's your roundup. We're going to try to do this every week here on the Canes Insight podcast, probably on, the Monday or Tuesday after the week is completed. So hopefully these guys that we talked about, a lot of them fighting for roster spots, really these guys in this class, but obviously still a bunch of other great Canes, scattered throughout the NFL. So excited to watch them coming up this season as we're getting closer, man. Football is it's here. We're talking about real football now, D.
Oh no, jacked up. And we're going to get into the Gator matchup a little bit more in the weeks to come here. We got basically, a little over 2 weeks until game day. And we're going to dig into some matches where Miami may have an advantage, which I think is a lot. Maybe some matches that are going to be a little tougher. So we'll dig into the Gator game as we get closer. Of course, camp is still going on. We will give you as much as we can give you from camp. Certainly will not steer you in the wrong direction. And we'll let you know when guys like an OJ Frederick or Ray Joseph are flashing like we did today. We'll keep an eye on all those things. Subscribe to this podcast. We got Mike Ryan on Wednesday. That'll be an annual deal. Got some things cooking for before the season as well.
Weekly or annual?
What did I say, annual?
You said annual.
Man, getting old. Pete, I don't know what I'd do without you. Weekly with Mike Ryan on the Canes Insight podcast. Like and subscribe. Sign up to CanesInsight.com for free. The hottest Canes discussion anywhere on the planet. 6.9 million posts and counting. Join the conversation. CanesInsight.com free forums. Till then, go Canes.
Go Canes.
Yeah, this an insight to the Canes, and we ain't playing no games. Joaquin said dominate, so that's what we do. Home of the legends and 7th floor crew, down in Miami where hurricanes brew. You here for the rumors, we bring you the news, cause it's all about the you, and nobody do it like Canes Insight. 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 It's Canes Insight.